So today we talk of something that gets attached to practically every brand. You have what is called the baseline or the tagline. Amul says the taste of India. KitKat says take a break. And Nike says just do it. Does every brand need them? What does it really add to the branding process?
Baselines or slogans are basically memory hooks. Please remember my brand by that line. Please remember me for this. It tends to be short, catchy, memorable. There are enough successful brands which don't necessarily have any baseline, or if they do, nothing comes to mind.
Yeah.
Even Safola, which everybody knows is an oil meant for something to do with the heart, nothing as a baseline or a slogan comes to mind. You know the idea of the brand and what it's meant for and what it's good for. So the brand idea has gone inside. I don't even know if there is any slogan. There probably is, but nothing comes to mind really. On the other hand, if I say fresh and juicy, then we know that we are talking about mango fruity, for instance. Now, some things have a way of going inside, probably needs no translation into regional languages also. And
Yeah.
mango fruit is the name of the brand anyway, therefore it rhymes, it has got that sing song aspect to it. Or even a simple line like Hamara Bajaj. Bajaj was a big name in the scooter category. It also came about because they did a series of very beautiful commercials in different parts of India, the way the people took care of their scooters and what it meant. And there were very enduring images of, a Parsi guy maintaining a scooter, somebody else doing blowing onto
Yeah.
the mirror and cleaning it with a cloth. Images which you can't forget. Therefore, Hamara Bajaj, which it's not very catchy in itself. Because of the work done around it, these couple of words got emotive and memorable. It's the same with an even older baseline, or probably around the same time, something like Only Vimal. Again, two words. It's as blatant self promotion as it can get. Only Vimal, don't buy anything else because we are the best. It almost seems to say it is such a manufacturer driven statement as Only Vimal. It's got no so called benefit to it, or it is not like, it doesn't have the charm and the lucidity of a fresh and juicy or the emotive value of Mara Bajaj. In fact, it's difficult to find any emotion in a line like Only Vimal. But it was popular because the brand kept using it again and again and again. So whether you liked it or not, you realized that, oh yeah, Only Vimal. Of course, I know because there was a jingle. It ended every commercial for years together with Only Vimal. So everybody knew the tune and everybody knew the words, and therefore it solved the problem of the mnemonic. So these bass lines also, when used, they come in different shapes. And for example, a competitive brand at that time was Raymond's. And at some point, they started using very nice
Complete
slogan called
man.
"The Complete Man." Now that said something. It was
Yeah.
not about the perfect fabric. It was not about them. It was about the consumer. And he said so. It certainly celebrated the user. It's not about just an executive, but an executive who was also good at other aspects of life and so on. Again, the TV commercials, print ads, and somebody who might have been kind to animals, who was probably more sensitive, who probably was a painter or something else, and therefore there was a multi-dimensionality to the man, and therefore the complete man brought out the modern person of that era.
All
Kind of.
the examples that you have given, I think, very strongly incorporated the brand into the tagline itself. So, whether it is Hamara Bajaj, which in a sense celebrated the ownership of a scooter, which at that point in time was India moving into the point where they could own their own scooters as opposed to cars. So, we didn't have as much of a four wheeler revolution in India as we had two wheelers. So, Hamara Bajaj just struck that chord and they did it beautifully, which is not. The other good thing is that all of these celebrated one aspect or the other of the brand connect, which came through very strongly. So, whether it is the complete man, it's because in some way it seems to convey that, yes, the complete man is this, or only Vimal. I really don't know why that succeeded, or whether at a certain point in time it just took off because it advertised very heavily. And the brands of that time, I think, had that particular advantage. If you could advertise on TV, if you could advertise heavily on the print and TV, you sort of took over. Like I love you, Rasna. I'm just wondering whether should it be related to the brand alone, or because McDonald's, I'm loving it, or have a break, have a Kit Kat, which is more oriented towards a brand promise or a benefit. Do you think that works better. So, what's your take on that?
See, my own feeling is that the Taste of India was more like a corporate statement, and
Yes.
probably fewer people are likely to remember it. The more famous
Yeah.
one is the Utterly Butterly Delicious, is what probably you
Yes.
remember
Yes.
Amul for,
Right.
which is more
Right.
consumer language. Otherwise, it's like saying I'm the greatest or something, Taste of India. No, these are all pompous things. It's just a variation of
Yes.
only Vimal again. So, whereas when it said Utterly Butterly Delicious, the very childlike language, the mischievous language, and the kind of hoardings and outdoor comment, political, social commentary that the brand had been doing for decades on end, even right up till today. But they've maintained it over the years. So, to my mind, Utterly Butterly Delicious is a very, from a consumer point of view, a very playful, benefit based, and memorable. That would be the ideal line. If it is benefit based, that means it's more about me, the consumer, rather than me, the manufacturer,
Brand.
or me, the brand.
Yeah.
A brand line would be considered very unsuccessful if everybody remembers the line, but they don't know who said it. Now, if that happens, that's probably money down the drain as far as a manufacturer is concerned.
Very true.
Soft drinks have had a bit of a good run with these baselines. I think everybody knows Dil Mange More, for example.
Yeah.
It started a new trend which did this English thing for the first time, because the more in this meant the English more, not the peacock more
Yes.
of
Yes. Yes.
Hindi. That is the memorable part I'm trying to get at. That you
Yeah.
do something where the line itself is remembered. The best of advertising all over the world, the line has a way of being remembered because it's like those catchy jingles, which even if you don't want, they play in the head. So some of
Yeah.
these lines go into the head easier than others. Thumbs Up said, "Taste the thunder," which to my mind was
Thunder.
brilliant because Thumbs Up, everybody knew in actual fact as well as in perception that it was a stronger drink than the other two. Had more bubbles or whatever it is. The mouth feel was just that more aggressive.
But Thumbs Up was always, in spite of being bought over by Coke, I don't think it lost market share because there was a very clear demographic that wanted that particular brand. The other one that I remember is What an Idea, Sergi. For a short while, as long as the brand existed, that What an Idea, Sergi, which took over the brand and created the situations where the brand actually started doing fairly well among a group of customers.
Over the years, we seem to have learned a few rules about them. It is that ideally, if you can build the brand name into it, although that doesn't seem to be necessary, while being still clever, memorable. Like only Vimal succeeded, in my opinion, and I think you were saying the same thing, by sheer media blast. That line should not have gone anywhere at all, but it did. On the other hand, Hamara Bajaj, because of its probably if it was just a bland line without those particular commercials and
Very
storytelling
true.
and memorable images, it wouldn't have gone anyway. And talking about that, it's the same with the international line for Nike, like just do it. It's easy
Yeah.
to praise that line as some very big thing, because we know the success of Nike. But by itself, those words don't do anything. What they did was they built it up. I mean, even a weekend runner, not just professional athletes, even a weekend runner knows what it means on a winter morning, even in a cold Delhi morning in December or something, trying to get out of the razai. Do I really need to go today? What happens if I miss? And you snuggle deeper into the razai and make yourself feel warmer, comfortable, and say nothing will happen if I don't go today. This
Yeah.
brand was speaking to that, basically, that kind of procrastination, that kind of laziness. Say, there is nothing for you to consider, there is nothing for you to ponder, there is nothing for you to decide, there is just do it. Basically, cut through the crap of excuses and other things that you can tell yourself to get out of fitness regimes and this and that. Later on became legendary because of some legendary commercials which exploded and the world of professional athletes. And for essentially the point I'm trying to make is whether it is just do it or whether it is Hamara Bajaj or whatever, in itself it doesn't promise you anything, but taken together with what other things you can do, and then if you were to make something of it and also put media money behind it, so it's a
Then,
question
yeah.
of a combination of some benefit, some attitude, some philosophy, some brand story coming out with brand name. Nice, but if it is strong enough, you don't even need to say just do it Nike.
When Apple came out with its range, it was going up against IBM, whose baseline was Think. And Apple came up with this whole series which said Think Different. And then they went in the direction of all these world leaders and people who had really changed the world. So the baseline then connected beautifully to the campaign, which again, I think exactly as you've described, needs to enrich the brand world and you need to define that brand world in a way that gives you an advantage, not just hang in there as a line simply because it's clever or it's well constructed or it simply entices people to begin with, but then it can't stay the course. Apple has delivered on Think Different is different from how that kind of baseline is almost like strategic intent as opposed to being just a line out there. KitKat has taken that break in all kinds of places. It's managed to make that whole thing stand for a break and that beautiful way in which the product is packaged, those bits you can break off. I think all of these have got to do they're almost like another layer that you're building, which some might interpret as, yeah, that is clever.
Building these lines
Yeah,
to such an extent that they become famous, that they become part of the public domain.
yeah,
Like you were saying a moment ago, that Nike will probably never get away from Just Do It, not for any other reason, because that line itself has become legendary. It's not about shoes anymore.
yes,
So now that is the ultimate, where your advertising gets remembered. Not your advertising gets remembered for saying, "Oh yeah, I know that advertising. Let me go buy their product." Is one level. Let
yeah,
me remember the advertising line itself is another level. For example, Think Different is not just about strategic thing alone. In my opinion, it is actually a benefit. You are
yes,
telling those guys, because strategy will still be about me, the brand. It's not about that. Is of
right,
no concern to anybody else.
right,
What is of significance is that you're telling people, do that other thing, do something else, try something,
yeah,
go off the thing. And you know
right,
what kind of people do that? Oh, that is happens to be Picasso, that happens to be Gandhiji, that happens to be. The brilliance of the
yeah,
brand was to take this kind of footage. These guys have a certain kind of a vision. In some, what I'm saying is a benefit rather than merely a sharing of a corporate philosophy or anything like that.
sure,
uh,
yeah,
because it was telling the consumers, be
yeah,
different, in a way permitting you to delve into something adventurous, new. Some of these things, like, just do it, think different. And even Adidas, while talking about sports shoes, for example, they
yeah.
came up with
Impossible is
impossible,
nothing.
there's
Yeah,
nothing. Mountain Dew, which is not such a big brand, but they had
yeah,
Darke Ajit. Now therefore there
yes,
was a lot of physicality and to show, and therefore that was
right,
more an attitude, I guess, that on the other side of fear is courage. Now that these baselines need to solve in terms of either capturing your mind in some way, either because it rhymes or the thought itself is different, like taste the thunder. It doesn't rhyme that, but you, what, taste thunder? I mean, you
yeah.
know the two words, but you've
And
not really looked at
subliminally,
it.
Thanda is also there.
These kind of brand ideas that are captured in baselines or slogans work well when this memorability factor of something about the line makes you remember it. One, it's
Yeah,
either, fresh and juicy, mango fruity. Now that rhymes and therefore you can't get away from. But
yeah,
when you say something like a dil mange more, or if you taste the thunder, or even earlier, Goldspot used to say the zing thing.
yeah,
Now that's a rhyming thing.
yeah,
So either the thought works and Think Different with its commercial sense works, or Hamara Bajaj, because of the commercial that it reminds you of, works. So there are a
yes,
few rules. Either you have something, some crazily jingle type rhyming thing going on, which works for, fast to cook, good to eat. Not exactly a rhyme, but there is some sing songness to it. So it
yeah,
doesn't say, for example, fast to cook, delicious to eat. Now that would have been more prose. But when you say fast to cook, good to eat, then there is something almost
yeah,
basic poetry about it, because the syllables are so easy to say. The simplicity of just good to eat, where goes very well with fast to cook. So there is something sing song about it, and there is a definite rhyme in the zing thing. So something like that seems to work. Or lines like think different or just do it, or Toyota's oh what a feeling internationally that was used,
yeah,
remind you of the work that was done around it. Because without that commercial that we talked about for Apple, think different by itself doesn't mean anything.
yes,
Just do it without
yes,
the work that was done doesn't mean anything. And there have been other brands which used none of these devices. It had nothing like that. For example, if only everything in life was as reliable as a Volkswagen. That was a baseline for Volkswagen that probably continues
yeah,
to be for years. That's not anybody's idea of a very memorable baseline, because it's quite a mouthful. If only everything in life was as reliable as Volkswagen.
yeah,
But the reason why people remember it internationally is simply because of the kind of commercials and communication they did around. So they basically explored all the things in life that was completely unreliable. And then in
yeah,
contrast, only if only marriages worked like that, if only relationships worked like that, If only
Yeah.
other things, other gadgets in life work like that. So suddenly it was a commentary about if only many other things in life was as reliable or as a Volkswagen, how nice life would be. We had this line in the 70s. I worked on the brand, although I didn't create the baseline. If you have the inclination, we have the time, for
Yeah.
HMT watches. That
Very well
again,
known line. Yeah.
on the face of it, there is no rhyme, there is no sing songness. Pretty long. If you have the inclination, we have the time. HMT watches. It doesn't even sound like a bass line. Now, therefore, these kind of things somewhere work because either because of the newness or because of what they did with it in their communication. Or a beautiful line for LIC, Zindagi ke saath bhi, Zindagi ke
Zindagi ke
baad
baad ki.
there is a sing songness. So the length doesn't matter because the sing songness something memorable about it there. I'm trying to make the point in HMT's case and in Volkswagen's case, it's only long and there is no sing song, there is no there is no
Yes.
rhyme, there is no nothing, and yet you remember it, which is why it's
Yes.
so hard to formulate any rules on why something will be remembered. If you have the inclination, you have the we have the time. On the face of it, it's very difficult to say what kind of stuff works. The easiest rule to probably make it be as short as you can and have an original idea somewhere, which is close to your
Yes.
brand and which means a benefit. Will's Filter did this long ago,
Yeah.
made for
Made for
each
each
other.
other.
They did say something about the tobacco and filter being perfectly
Filter and
matched.
tobacco perfectly
Perfectly
matched.
matched.
They used to take the back page and ensure that it ran issue after issue. So they really went deep with that whole thing. I think
No,
exciting to strategic to 2 words and 3 words and becoming a philosophy and completely merged into what the advertising proposition is. At the end of the day, no rules. There is no one way of getting the perfect baseline right.
I just remember that one of probably the most revolutionary baselines that happened in the West was probably in the 70s that L'Oreal came out with the line, L'Oreal because I'm worth it. That was more like a social movement because till then cosmetics and products like that were being sold to the females as being attractive to the male. And
Yes.
therefore, you better be beautiful for him, all that. So now, woman power, so to speak, was gaining, and this caught that mood of that sentiment beautifully. L'Oreal did a remarkable job of using that line because I'm worth it. It seems like a harmless line in retrospect, but
Yes.
to women of that generation and for generations to come,
Made
even
a
today,
huge
a lot of
impact. Yeah.
it stood for a certain self-worth. Listen, I'm in it for me, let's get that
Yeah.
right, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it seemed to resonate with obviously millions of women all around the world.
L'Oreal managed to say that in the simplest of terms, which is to say, because I'm worth it. It's not just a benefit that I'm buying into, it also says I'm ready for this, and this is what I think of myself, which is why I'm perfectly fine with buying it. It taps so deep into you, into what advertising defines as your identity and how it's elevated. Just took off from that point. I hope with this episode, we've given you a sense of why a baseline is necessary, what it can do, whether strategic intent alone is enough, how creative execution matters, and how a relatively simple line or a very long line can actually go a lot further. Subscribe, share, let us know what you think, and keep watching The Old Bandicoots.
Bye bye.